read picks right up where we left off last week. If you remember, Jesus was preaching and teaching on the level place, right on the plain there, and he has blessed the poor and cried out, "Woe to you who are rich." And he keeps going with these mind-boggling proclamations. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. If someone does physical violence, slaps your face, offer them the other cheek to slap again. Give more than what is demanded. Demand, give me their shirt, give me your coat, and give them your shirt as well. Allow others to take from you, make no effort to stop them or to get your things back. Give to anyone who asks. And forget about loans. If someone asks for a loan, just make it a gift. Wow. Just wow. Does anyone else want to take Jesus to task for this? Does this seem like a good way to live? It's hard. In my pondering this week, I tried to see if it fit with what I did last week. Attribute Jesus' message just to particular people. Because he couldn't be saying to the poor, give to whoever asks, let people beat you down even more. He couldn't mean that to the poor. He must just be talking to the rich and powerful, right? He's trying to get them to loosen their grip on their stuff. Give to anyone. Don't try to get things back. But you know what? I just couldn't reconcile it with what's actually there. Because there's that turning the other cheek thing. And I tell you, no matter how much money or stuff a person has, it is hard to say they're in a powerful position if someone is demanding something from them, maybe at knife point or gun point or by threat of jail. It's hard to say they're in a powerful position if someone is slapping them, demanding things from them, taking things from them. He is clearly not saying that there are some people who deserve those 2 slaps on the cheek, so don't bother to try to stop them. It's a message to everyone gathered at that crowd. These are hard teachings, and they have certainly been misused in ways that have caused great harm. Victims of domestic violence have been advised to stay put, to turn the other cheek, for instance. We've all heard stories of these con artists who wipe out the bank accounts of the generous souls. They leave them not only bankrupt, but humiliated and betrayed. Is this really what Jesus had in mind? It's hard to imagine such being the case. I mean, on the one hand, there is evidence that Jesus was not terribly concerned with safety. Not his personal safety, not the safety of his disciples. He sent them out. As he sent them out, he said, "I'm sending you out like lambs among the wolves." He told them not to take a purse or a bag or even any sandals. And heaven knows he has no concern about his own well-being as he determinedly went on to Jerusalem where he knew what would happen to him. On the other hand, he has shown such tenderness and concern for the poor and powerless, for people who are hungry or ill, who are blind or lame. He wants them to be healed. He brings that into being. He has fed people, thousands of people. He wants people to be as whole and well as they can be. So how do we reconcile that tenderness of his with what he is saying here, which sounds so stressful? Now, sometimes when we act with the kind of generosity that Jesus is talking about, it can take a person up short and completely change the dynamic. The book we just finished reading in our book group tells the story of the monk who was robbed. A robber came in and took everything, and the monk just said, "Oh, go ahead, help yourself, take everything you want." And the robber grabbed everything and started to leave, and the monk saw a little bag he forgot, and he ran after him. "Wait, you forgot this!" And the robber was so overcome with the spirit of love that he gave everything back. There are true stories like this too. I read this several years ago. It happened in 2009. A man named Julio Diaz from the Bronx was going on his way home from work, looking forward to going to his favorite diner for dinner, and he got off the subway and he was approached by a young man with a knife who demanded his wallet. And Julio gave him the wallet, no problem, take it. And the young man started to walk away, and Julio said, wait a minute, here, take my coat. If you're gonna be out here all night robbing people, you look like you're gonna be pretty cold. So take my coat. And the young man was flabbergasted. Why are you doing this? And I said, I don't know, if you're willing to risk your freedom for a couple of bucks I have in my wallet, you must really need it. And the kid said, he said, I just wanted a meal. You can have my wallet. I was just going for a meal at my favorite diner. Why don't you come with me? And the young man went along, and Julio knows everyone in the diner, and they're all talking. He's like, you talk to everyone. They all know you. Yeah, you talk to the dishwashers just like you talk to the owner. Well, of course, this is how you treat people. And then he said, Julio said to me, I'd love to buy you dinner, but you have my wallet. And so the young man handed back the wallet, and Julio gave the young man some money out of the wallet, paid for the meal, and life went on. Pauline Jacoby, a 92-year-old woman from Tennessee, went to the grocery store. She put her groceries in the trunk and was walking around to the front when a young man got into the passenger seat and pulled a knife and said, give me your money or I'll kill you. And she said, you're not going to rob me of my money. 3 times she said no, and he said, I could kill you. And she said, well, you might kill me, but that just means I get to heaven and you don't go to heaven. And she said, Jesus is with me everywhere. And the young man looked around. She said, no, I carry Jesus with me everywhere. And then she just started talking to him and why are you living this way? And the guy started crying and went to get out of the car, and she gave him all the money from her wallet, and he kissed her cheek, and it went on. So there's a way when we treat people as people and with dignity. It can help them see themselves differently. But it doesn't always work that way. We've heard horror stories of even when the wallet is turned over, there's still an act of violence that comes after it. Zora Neale Hurston, she's an influential author of African-American literature, and she says, if you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. So there's some ways that our silence and our loving acts are manipulated by those who would do us harm. Now, personally, I find I am more likely to encourage people to set boundaries, to not let others take advantage of you, not to take too much, not too much of your stuff, not too much of your time or your energy. Don't let people take advantage, would be my counsel. I would call it practicing good self-care. And I read passages like this and I have to wonder, am I pushing people away from the true discipleship Jesus calls us to? It could be. It really could be. I was really struggling with this scripture. I hope you're struggling, wrestling also, right? Because it's not easy. Now, I've talked to you before about how the lectionary works. There's this series of readings that are suggested for every Sunday, and every Sunday you have 4 readings, and there usually is a thread that ties them all. So you could see, I'm sure from our responsive reading the psalm, how it ties to what we're talking about with the gospel. The Hebrew scripture lesson that I did not use was the story of Joseph's brothers coming to him for help, not knowing he was their brother. These brothers who had thrown him in a pit and left him for dead. And Joseph remembers who they are, and there's this tremendous moment of reconciliation and forgiveness where Joseph is just overcome. So we can see the connection with that, right? With forgiveness, Joseph's story. But I struggled to understand, how does Paul's passage on spiritual bodies fit in with what we're talking about? I thought the passage was really beautiful, but I couldn't think of how to tie it in, so I was going to initially ignore it. But I just couldn't. It just kept coming up in my mind. This whole thing about planting the seed and it growing into something different. Paul is trying to explain something that is really inexplicable. And the only thing the only things we have to try to make sense of what Paul was saying or what Jesus was saying is these words in the scripture. These words that have been translated and retranslated, that are set before us in a completely different context, with no voice cues, no facial cues. We can't see the mannerisms of the people speaking. Paul, actually, this was a letter Paul wrote. He couldn't communicate any of those things to the people at the time. I am also tied to words to some degree, but at least you have the other stuff, my voice and my facial expressions and my mannerisms, so you can see I'm really struggling. But we don't have a lot to go on to try to sort out what is being said. Now, it is likely that Paul received a letter from the congregation in Corinth, something that expressed some skepticism about the dead being resurrected. They were probably trying to spiritualize the teaching, like, oh, your spirit will live on in the hearts of others. The spirit will live on in the memory of your deeds, something like that. And Paul is adamant. That's not the case. We're not talking about this vague sense of nothingness. There's something real that lives. There's something that is resurrected. The body is resurrected. It's not zombies. It's not the living dead. It is a whole new creation. There is a life beyond this life. And we cannot know because it is beyond our knowing. We could not even imagine what plant was going to come from our seed. And we know what kind of plants grow, right? I mean, we can imagine, pumpkin, flower, cilantro. We know what these things are, but can we even imagine what is beyond this life? What the next life consists of? I don't think we can. Paul uses what he has, his metaphors and his similes. He connects his ideas to things the Corinthians would understand. And pondering this helped open up for me the teachings of Jesus in Luke's gospel. We need to take these teachings seriously, even if not literally. We need to take them seriously. Jesus is trying to explain a hard concept, and he's bringing in different ideas. These are not commandments from him. This is not a new law being laid down. I don't think that's how Jesus worked, laying down laws. I believe what he wants for us is a full and free life, here and now and in the hereafter. And so he looks at the things that enslave us. What enslaves us? Sometimes it's the laws themselves, but more often they are our fears and our self-interest. Those are the things that enslave us. Our freedom lies in thinking of ourselves less. Not thinking less of ourselves. It's not about thinking, oh, I don't deserve to be treated well. I shouldn't have nice things. I'm a terrible person. It's about thinking of ourselves less often, to become less the focus of our concern, getting over ourselves enough to really see and care for others. And when I say others here, I want you to imagine the small o others. Because when we make others a capital O, other, we get further from the kingdom. When we extend care and love to others, small o, we bring the kingdom closer. I can imagine that Jesus was concerned about the trap of victimhood, of our righteous indignation about being a victim. Does that have power for you like it has power for me? When I think someone has done me wrong, man, it can rule my thoughts, right? It just keeps running around my head how awful, how bad that person is, how right I am, and I get all caught up in this muck. And yet it leaves me with a loss of agency. I feel powerless, right? That's the stance of a victim. You're powerless. You villainize others. There's greater separation from others, more mistrust, more fear. So I think about the examples Jesus used. Someone tries to take something from you. Someone is hostile to you. Someone slaps your face. And Jesus seems to be saying, and you know what, even then, you don't have to be a victim. You don't have to get all caught up in that sense of powerlessness and anger and resentment. He tries to get us to imagine living a different way, the way that he lived. And you know how he lived? He was defenseless in this world. He was defenseless. And he knew there was nothing to defend. He knew that he was not of this world. It couldn't get to him. He wasn't of it. Defenses are not needed. The defenses he knew would in fact bind him more tightly to this world of fear and victimhood and this loss of freedom. It's as if Jesus was already living in his spiritual body, even as he had an earthly body. He was living in that spiritual freedom. I don't know how he could connect so closely with that other realm. Maybe he had seen more of it. Maybe he had clearer memories of that realm to draw from. But if you think Jesus is the only one that came from that realm into this earthly existence, I would beg to disagree. I would argue that we have all come from that realm, and we will all return to that realm. But right now we have these earthly bodies. And these hard teachings of Jesus invite us to join him in that spiritual life, even while we are still in these earthly bodies. St. Teresa of Avila says, the whole way to heaven is heaven itself. It's in walking in that heavenly way that we are in heaven already. Not only on our way there, but also there. Jesus says these shocking things, perhaps, to get us imagining, to get us thinking about a new way, to encourage us to believe that there is a different way of living, a different way of being, one that is not focused on fear and insecurity and anxiety about not enough. There is a different way of being where we know we are not of this world. It cannot really touch us. We are of another place, another world that is far more freeing and joyful and rich. It is hard for me to imagine loving an enemy. An enemy is someone who is hostile to you, who is against you. It is hard to imagine extending myself on behalf of someone who is hostile to me. It makes me feel vulnerable. And especially, I might try something as a manipulation to try to get someone to like me or to show how much superior I am to them. But Jesus is asking us to do something different. He's saying, doing it not as a manipulation, but do it because God does it. Do it because you have received the love and mercy of your Creator, and because it will bring you to the spiritual way. Jesus calls to me because I am trying to live out a different way of being. And I have someone in my life right now who is hostile to me, and it's hard. My answer for now has been to withdraw and to avoid contact with this person, at least to do no harm. I figure is good. I pray for this person. Jesus has that in his instructions too. Pray for those who hurt you, and prayer costs me nothing, and it makes me feel so virtuous. But I wonder if there's more, if there's another way I can extend myself for this person. What would that look like? Could I send an anonymous gift? Could I talk praises of this person to someone else? Can I do something that would really be beneficial to this person? Not expecting recognition or thanks and reconciliation, maybe even hoping they don't even find out who it is, but just know that I have blessed another person. You see how Jesus has got me thinking. And the idea of giving to anyone who asks. I've really been struggling with that. I've been struggling with how I deal with the person who has asked for financial assistance several times. I wonder, am I enabling them? How much help is appropriate? At some point in the connection, I started to feel manipulated, and it didn't feel good. And so I started to say no to the requests. But Jesus has got me thinking, should I stop my giving because I don't feel good about it? Am I spending too much time judging this person? Is the answer to just say yes? Or maybe there's some other way to respond in this situation. Maybe I need to break out of this dance of seeing that person as the taker and I'm the giver, this false dichotomy of are you to say yes or no. Can I find a way to get to know this person better? To see this person as a beloved child of God who has something to offer the world, maybe even me. You see how these teachings have got me thinking. I will still probably encourage people to set good boundaries. I will still advise them not to accept abuse, not physical abuse or verbal abuse. But maybe at the same time, I can avoid demonizing the ones who are doing the abusing. And maybe I can help others to stop demonizing, to still see the humanity of the person who is doing wrong. See how these teachings have got me thinking. Have they got you thinking too? What do these teachings stir up in you? Are there places where you feel convicted by what Jesus says? Do you feel skeptical? Oh, sure, that's fine for the heavenly realm, but it doesn't make any sense in this life. Do you feel defensive? Are you thinking about the times you have been forgiving or generous? Are you thinking about the times someone has been unreasonably forgiving and generous with you? Can you think of the people you've seen live out some of these radical ways of loving? Like Julio Diaz and that elderly woman in Tennessee. And the monk. I see it in my brother. My younger brother just lives out such a life of radical love. Never, really literally never says a bad word about anyone. And I thought, this is about radical ways of loving. That's what Jesus wants to invite us to, radical ways of loving, because that's what it's all about. When we expand our ways of loving, when we love more people and love in more ways, that's what's going to usher in the kingdom. It is love that brings it about. Loving without counting the cost. That kind of love is the only thing with real power to heal this broken world. So let us not only hope, but begin to imagine, even if we really can't, let the juices flow. Begin to imagine a world of radical love. And let's begin to act, to do what we can, to live into it, to bring it about. May it be so.